An intolerance to diversity is a serious threat to humanity. Hey everyone, thank you for joining me on this week's episode of Unapologetically Unscripted. I'm super excited about this week's topic. We're going to dive into DEI. I would love to introduce you guys to the two guests that are joining me today. I have Erica White, Vice President of Operations for the Pivotal Companies, and Shonda Quick, broker/realtor with Keller Williams. Welcome, Erica and Shonda.
Hey, Monica. Hey, Shonda. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm so excited to chat with you guys about this. Something that's super important to me. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome.
Thanks, Monica. Hey, Erica. I'm Shonda. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Awesome. So ladies, let's dig in. I think the quote was sent to me by Erica, and the quote I started out with really was hit it with a home run. I think the intolerance to diversity is a serious threat to humanity. And, I noticed that, I read an article actually from Work Tango on 22 on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I had some takeaways from that article, but some takeaways to discuss with you guys. So diversity, equity, and inclusion, referred to jointly as DEI, are three words that have greater importance than the sum of their parts. It captures the culture of an organization in managing a diverse workforce that feels included and has equal opportunities to succeed. That quote was by Milan Fatorik and came from that article. The second portion that I quoted from that article was that the top quartile of companies with greater ethnic and gender diversity are likely to outperform their competitors by 25%. So there's value in being diverse economically, but even from a social perspective, Generation Z members are beginning to enter the workforce in droves, and they're the most diverse generation in North American history. So what I would like to say is, it begins with diversity, but on its own, diversity doesn't translate into success if it's not paired with equity and inclusion. With diversity alone, the job is half done, with inclusion and equity being the remaining portion of the job. Inclusion ensures that everyone feels welcome. Equity ensures that proper support is granted for advancement. The three bolster many moving parts that must work in tandem to create a successful DEI program within any organization. Erica, share with us why DEI is important to you.
Yeah, so DEI has been super important to me for a really long time now, both professionally and personally. I really think that having a successful DEI program really drives innovation in your company, and also really sets your teams up for success by giving them the tools and resources that they need. I would say professionally, I grew up in this industry that was super male-centric. Being in property management, specifically student housing, there was a lot of times where it was super male-centric. And so I had a mission to be a person for the people and women in general, and just being a woman in power. And so I really dove into that aspect of it, but also personally, my husband of 10 years, he is biracial. My children are biracial. So making sure that we understand that, change starts at home, and really taking that out to our communities is super important for me to be able to teach my family and to be able to be supportive for them as well.
I love that. Shonda, what about you?
To me, diversity, equity, and inclusion is our differences. It's what sets everyone apart. And it, all of those differences results in fair and impartial outcomes. And that's what creates a sense of belonging for everyone. I kind of think of it this way, that everybody gets invited to the party. That's the diversity of it. And then, having an opportunity to contribute to the playlist, that's the equity. And then getting to dance, that's the inclusion. So making sure that everyone is involved. And for me, being a woman of color, it's important that whatever environment that I'm in, the situation that I'm in, making sure that my voice is heard. Also having a daughter growing up, she's a teenager, making sure that she understands that her voice is important, her opinion matters, and that it's respected. Our differences are what help to shape the world. We're different, everybody's different. We all can grow from that. We all can learn from that.
I totally agree. I love your analogy with that. That's awesome. And as I was reading and studying and learning, more myself, that's like the perfect analogy. So it seems as though DEI became a much more discussed topic during the pandemic. I can't do this. What's wrong with me today? Time out. Start again. One more time. So yes, Shonda, I love your analogy. I think that hits the nail on the head as far as the three parts. DEI became a much more discussed topic during the pandemic, and we saw a lot of courses and other things created, and more discussions become more prominent during that time. And I think that there are, certain dimensions that capture the diversity of your workforce. Those are race, gender identity, sexual orientation, your disability status, which I, didn't think a lot about, but it's true, racial justice, and then harassment and discrimination. So it's really apparent that you have to have open-ended feedback and engagement that are super important in creating a DEI program that's successful within an organization. The Harvard Business Review lists collect, count, and compare. So I liked your party music or playlist and dance. It really lined up with that. I think based on the above and your personal experiences, as well as taking the DEI course that we took, what are 2 or 3 of your top takeaways that organizations could implement right away? Erica, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I just have to shout out UCF for that amazing course. It was a course that they did for free and offered to thousands of people to get a certification in DEI in the workforce. And I just was so happy to be able to do that course alongside with both of you guys. And I just learned so much and had so many takeaways there. I think just starting from the ground up, one of the biggest things that I think is important for, businesses and, your communities alike is to establish a DEI education budget, making a space for programs, for training, for forums and other initiatives. So that way you're still learning and going, because to make sustainable change, you have to educate yourself first and then execute on it. I think also making sure that you're updating your policies and maintaining those as they, are relevant with that education that you're pairing with is super important. So we want to make sure that all of our employees understand how to properly report any, bias or harassment or any type of microaggression or anything like that. Is that clear for everyone to understand how to report that? Or are they digging through maybe an outdated policy manual? It's also important to review things like your parental leave and see if that is benchmarked across your industry, and just taking a look at those, broader areas and ensuring that those things are equitable and measurable to your industry.
I love that. What about you, Shonda?
I completely agree with that. And I'm going to kind of echo off of some of what Erica said, but the organizations, they have to build and implement those plans, but then they also have to establish what those benchmarks are to identify, are these plans working, and not just have a set of policies in place, but understand, okay, we have to look to see, are we seeing results? Are we seeing the results that we set out to see? And ensure that everyone is represented. When you establish, these teams that are, creating these policies, do you have full representation on that? And also leadership. Is everyone from the top to all of your associates and everyone in between represented within those groups? And I think that's an important piece of it.
That's a great.
And they have to be willing. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say they have to be willing to accept that feedback, listen to it with open ears. And that's the only way to be able to make changes and understand, to make sure that everyone's represented and also make changes where need be.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's an excellent segue into what I was going to share next that I read in this article, was that over 2/3 of businesses state diversity to be a priority, but only 26% had diversity and inclusion goals for leaders. So echoing off of what you said, it's been said that a company's core values and their mission statement should start from the top down. But I believe in this case, it's of utmost importance that the leaders in any given organization should have goals that permeate down. So if you survey from the bottom up to get a gauge on where you're at on DEI within your, the culture within your own organization, then you're going to get a more accurate baseline. Then you can establish the goals for the leaders that bolster, foster, and design a DEI program within that organization. So so I thought that was a cool takeaway that, 2/3 of people are saying, hey, yeah, it's, we have it to be a priority, but only 26% are actually creating goals for leaders to permeate down. So I thought that was really interesting. What are your thoughts on that, Shonda?
Yeah, the leadership has to actively be involved. You can't just say we're going to have this program and then not do anything with it. And then they also have to demonstrate the importance of the impact on DEI within the workplace, because again, it comes from the top down. And as a result of that, you're going to have higher engagement. You'll have increased productivity, reduce stress, reduce conflict within the workplace. You're going to have your associates wanting to come to work. It's going to be a more conducive work environment from everyone. And understand that, when you have people that are showing up, that doesn't mean that they're engaged. So that's why you need that feedback from them. Just because they're there doesn't mean that they're happy and they're, satisfied with the day-to-day and the organization. We want to make sure that they're engaged and they're getting everything that they need. And so, the bottom line to me, when people feel like they belong and they can be their true self within an organization, that's truly when they're going to flourish.
I love that. And part of this article said, and I didn't, mirror it over, but part of what I read was talking exactly about that just because people you try to get the engagement on your surveys, but you have to really ask open-ended questions so you can really get where people stand, because people sometimes are afraid to say what they really feel or think. Because they worry about harassment or, to be frowned upon for sharing the cold, hard truth or the facts. And so it was very telling to me when I was reading through it and thinking about it and, how important it is for the surveying to go from the bottom up, but for it to be surveyed in a manner that allowed people to really share what their true feelings are and what's really going on within that workplace. Because it takes all of us, to your point in the beginning, Shonda, where, you have DISC testing and all this other personality testing and all these other things. And often, birds of a feather flock together, but we need people on the other side of the wheel. We need people that are different than us to make us stronger and better. So I love that. Erica, what about you? Do you have any thoughts on it?
I always got some thoughts. So absolutely. So really to echo off what Shonda said, really your DEI program and how you go about this in your company, it has to become authentic. It can't be a popularity contest. You can't just say you're doing these things without doing them. Your employees are going to know, your, clients, your customers, your peers, everyone's going to know if you're not being authentic in this. And it's really important that we do start from the top down and that we really drive that innovation. And, a lot of that is also creating these affinity groups where people do feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and sharing, how to make a change. And then also broadening out that to, your surveys and your feedback and things like that. So you really can take the time and really do the data and see how you make the impact within your company. I know Harvard Business Online is actually doing a course right now where they really focus on the statistics and the data and the demographics of how these things really change your company. And so I've had a lot of great takeaways from that. But again, just like what you said, it really starts at the top and making sure everyone feels represented and really feels included in that.
I love it. Yeah, I love that. I think we covered we only have a short 15 minutes together. I think we could talk about this for hours on end, to be honest. I'm so thankful for both of you coming on today and sharing. I'm still here live in Fort Myers, Florida. Someday I'm going to leave here in 10 short days from now. And so thank you guys for joining me this week and talking about such an important discussion and topic. And I think it's something that needs to be at the forefront of all of us, entrepreneurs, business owners alike. And it doesn't need to be something that, like you said, Erica, is for a popularity contest or, for any, it's not about that. It's about us being better as a whole and making a difference from the top down by really evaluating from the bottom up where we are. So again, I want to thank you both for joining me today. I want to thank the listeners for listening in. If you liked, please give us a like and subscribe, but also feel free if there's any other questions or comments that you guys have have that, maybe you thought of during this episode, feel free to hit them in our comments in the bottom, whether you're seeing this on YouTube, on, Spotify listening, or through Apple. So we'd love to hear your feedback. And again, thank you guys all for joining us. Erica and Shonda, thanks so much. I really, really enjoyed having you guys on today. Hey guys, if you like this episode, please hit like and subscribe.